Welcome to Lioness at the Door, a podcast where we discuss creating a life of joy by embracing the gift of agency, our power to choose and be accountable, which gives us the amazing opportunity to grow. We're two regular girls talking about the challenge of converting what we believe into what we actually do and who we are becoming. I'm Amy Rasmussen, a teacher by profession, a wife and mother by choice, an optimist by nature, and happy by design. I'm here with my friend Jackie, the creator of Lioness at the Door.
Hi, I'm Jackie Sorensen. I'm a wife and a mother and grandmother and holistic health coach for women of faith. The image of Lioness at the Door is meant to inspire us to see ourselves as converted, wise, strong, and able women at the threshold of choice. The door represents our opportunity to choose our path moment by moment in all circumstances.
In the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about unnecessary noise. Most of you know that as clutter, but we like to call it unnecessary noise. And we've been talking about cultivating awareness so that then we can do something about the noise so our energy can go where we want it to go. Last week, we talked about our physical environment. This week, we're going to talk about schedule and calendar. But before we do that, I wanted to tell you just a little story, an experience I had. I exercise in the morning, and some mornings I walk and some mornings I run. And I meet up with people some mornings and I talk to people on the phone some mornings. And it's early. So I'm generally just in autopilot. Get up, get the clothes on, get outside. So last week I got up. It was a running morning. I got my clothes on. It was cold. I put my layers on and I went outside and I walked up the road to the corner where I usually start running. In the instant I started running, I said to my friend on the phone, "Oh my gosh, I have the wrong shoes on." I put on my walking shoes and it made the biggest difference as soon as I started running that I didn't have my running shoes on. And since we've been talking about awareness and clutter and unnecessary noise, I had this thought. Realizing that they were the wrong shoes, like having that awareness all of a sudden come to me, was really important in exercise. And it's also really important, and it's like a lightning bolt when we recognize it in our lives. But sometimes if we're just walking through our lives, we don't notice it, right? It's just kind of over there. But as soon as we try to start running, or in this case with scheduling, as soon as we try and add that one more thing, all of a sudden we recognize something's got to change. We're not in the right shoes anymore. So the shoes were working as long as I was walking. In fact, they're the shoes I walk in every week. But if I was going to run, I needed different shoes. And I think that is what we're going to be talking a little bit about today as we talk about the schedule and the calendar and becoming aware of what is unnecessary noise. So Jackie, with that shoe intro, what have you got for us?
Well, going off of that to not having a schedule, you can kind of get away with when you're walking. So there are a couple of things we're going to be talking about. One is to maybe you have a schedule and it's packed and it's overflowing to the point where you're not functioning. Or maybe you are living, but you don't actually have a schedule and you're just putting fires out everywhere.
Yep.
You're just waiting for someone to come up to you and say, "Mom, I need a ride. I'm supposed to be there in 5 minutes." So there are a couple of different ways to look at this. One is just too much. One is not knowing, not having a plan, not having a schedule, right? That can cause incredible stress and the noise that we're talking about, because you're living in this, maybe in your sympathetic nervous system state where you're just, I've got to put out this fire and put out that fire, and I'm in fight or flight. I'm just running all the time. Neither one of those are very healthy. So in the conversation about what overall also what we're talking about is stopping this habit of spending our energy keeping things covered up, keeping things out of our view. Maybe we don't know, if we're talking about our environment, we're spending so much energy ignoring the pile or the room or in my case right now, the toy room downstairs that needs to be start over.
Right.
And I recognized that after everybody left this weekend. And I went in there and it got blown up, but it's an unnecessary blow up. It's like there's just too much stuff in there. It needs to be pared down, and then people can come and enjoy it, and it will take half the time to put it back together, right? But if we're talking about schedule, I think those two problem spots can be alleviated by, first of all, becoming aware. So just like we did in environment, we kind of took a pencil around and wrote down the trouble spots. Well, in the schedule, it could be going through day by day your week and saying, how are Mondays working? How are Tuesdays working? What's happening on Wednesday? Is it too smashed? Am I too harried? Here's a really good question. And a teacher asked me this years ago, and it helped me so much. He said, I don't want you to ever live your life dreading a day that's coming. And for me, that meant, when he said that, I thought, oh, he's talking about Monday, because Monday is laundry day. And I am exhausted at the end of every Monday. So just with that idea of, let's look at the schedule and see if there is a day or a time or a day of the week that we are dreading. That's a good red flag. Take note. And it could be for a million different reasons. Maybe you have carpool and laundry and your family night all on one day, and you're trying to move the proverbial mountain. I mean, laundry can be that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And maybe this is what I did at that time when I recognized that I really dreaded that day. And the dread, like, it bleeds over into your other days, So I completely revamped it. And instead of doing all of the laundry on one day, I spread it out. So I did one load on these particular days, and I was able to wash it, dry it, and put it away without ever feeling like I was moving a mountain. And it wasn't stalking me later, like on the bed, and you want to go to bed, but no, there's the laundry there to fold, or folded laundry or whatever. That's one of my worst things. I despise that. Anyway, so there's one thing. Look at the red flags, like how you feel about any given day. Then pull it apart. What's happening on that day? Maybe, so this is speaking to if you have a schedule and it's not quite working, right? Pull it apart. Remember, you're in the driver's seat. No one is forcing you to do things in a particular order. Granted, we all have parameters.
Right.
And we have to be careful in this process, I think, not to move into victim brain, where we start feeling like, well, I have no choice. I have to do laundry. I have to take the kids to school. I have to make breakfast, whatever. That attitude just doesn't help anyone, least of all ourselves. It makes my life miserable, and it's a choice that we make. So recognize the choices, recognize the feeling, recognize the attitude that you have as you're going through these things. So the other flip side would be, if you're just putting out fires and you haven't made a schedule, which simply is pre-made decisions. I'm going to pre-decide before that day comes what I'm going to do on that day. And then I can finesse, I can finesse it. I can make it more comfortable. Maybe you have a new baby, and maybe you need a nap because you're getting up all the time at night. That needs to be factored in there. One of the things that we do in Lioness, and it's the thing that the 7 Steps to Family Wellness group is going to be doing in a month, and that is called time blocking. And time blocking is the process of writing out everything that is your life, your responsibilities, your commitments, the things that you do on any given day, whether it's in your household, whether it is a job, whether it is volunteering at the school, whatever it is, your book club, your group that gets together for lunch, your, whatever it is. And you're writing it all out. And we have a little form, we just plug it all in.
Mm-hmm.
And then to make the decisions beforehand, we pull out the skeleton of a week and we make decisions about when I'm pulling off of this step one, I'm pulling those things off and I'm deciding where I'm going to put them on the week. And we do it in pencil because then you take a trial run.
Mm-hmm.
You just run it through. How did it work to have these jobs and these events on the same day? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's really too close to when I take my turn driving carpool.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that harried. So I'm going to move this thing over to this day. I'm going to even this out just a little bit, put a little space in there. Then I'm going to run it again. And I'm going to see what happens. It's just like being the curious scientist, right? How do I want this to go? I'm the one that is creating my life. I'm the one that's making these decisions. I'm accepting the parameters that I have chosen in my life. Even though sometimes we choose those things and we don't know what's on the other end of the stick, right?
Right.
Which is part of the reason it's easy to go into victim brain. Because when I chose to have that child, guess what? I didn't know everything that was going to come with that responsibility.
Right.
Because I've never done it before. That's life. Here we are. We chose that. It also comes with this. So part of this is wrapping our minds around and accepting the choices that we've made and what they entail. And then part of it is just that really fun, heady stuff of being able to pick where we want things to go and then running it through, see how it works. If it doesn't work, tweak it. And just bear in mind that that is the process. You're tweaking. I have some lionesses that come through this program and they have a time blocking pattern for spring, for summer, for fall, and for winter. They have 4 different ones. At our house, when our kids were growing up, we had 2. We had one that was the school year and we had one that was the summer because Dad was a teacher. And so summer was vastly different
Mm-hmm.
than the school year. And those were written out and we shifted to this kind of time blocking and then we shifted back in. So it's totally, sky's the limit, however it works for you. But making those decisions beforehand brings peace, brings steadiness, helps you to have boundaries and then to hold boundaries. And it's a glorious way to live with kids because kids really, really thrive in boundaries.
Right. And honestly, we all do. The right boundaries, right? They can't be the straitjacket and they can't just be like no boundaries at all.
Girl. Yeah.
Right. It's got to be somewhere in there. One thought that comes to mind is I know that the phrase time blocking is out there in a number of different forms.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a form out there where the suggestion is, and I think this really applies to mothers of young children, where it's like every day can be different. And you think you finally have things rolling and then nap time changes, right? Or all of a sudden they only need one nap or whatever. It's just very fast paced. It's very fluid. And one method of time blocking is you at least just look at your week. Like you said, you look at everything that needs to be done. And we say needs because, if we're going to stay alive, we need to eat. And if we're not going to get ill, then we need to take care of diapers and all of those things, right? And figure out how much time it takes and then be aware of just the time that it takes, right? And so we realize, oh, I have a sick child for 3 days, right? So my glorious plan that I'm going to do this at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, whatever, that doesn't work quite as well in those early days of motherhood as it does for me now. Now, a time on the clock works really well. But when I was a mother of young children, it worked a lot better for me to be aware of, okay, laundry probably takes generally about this much of time out of my week. And feeding takes about this much of time out of my week, right? And then I was at least able to see what my flex time was.
Yes. And that is the whole point of the word block.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. So but I just wanted our listeners to know that it could look different than the schedule we're talking about, because we're both in places where it does work generally, right? To have a day for this and a time for that. And you can work it as a young mom too, but just know it's going to be pretty fluid too.
Yes.
That's where their pencil comes in.
The idea of a block, I see people get really frustrated when they have small children and they want to plan their time in 30-minute increments. It's not wise. It is not a wise way to begin.
No.
The block means that Monday morning, that block of time, I want to start 2 loads of laundry. I want to water the plants, and I want to do breakfast and lunch. Doesn't say at 8 o'clock I'm going to be putting that load of laundry in. It means throughout that morning, with being able to flex, to change the sheets on the bed of a child that got sick in the night, to help the child out the door that's having a little difficulty in the morning, to deal with the ebb and flow of family life. It has to stay chunky. It just has to be chunky. So the block, I'm glad you brought that up. Block is very purposeful, meaning put a few items in a chunk of time and then let yourself breathe in it. Let your children breathe in it and live, but also be focused enough to get things done. Right.
Because laundry is an ongoing process. We do need to eat multiple times a day, right? And so but you also don't know, I didn't know exactly when my kids would need to eat next, right? That was not this, I can tell for myself as an adult, it's a little more regular, right? But with kids, it wasn't. So if you have that, okay, between 8 and noon, these are the things that I want in that block.
Yep.
But you have to be careful of exactly what Jackie said with that idea of, oh, great, I'll have half-hour time blocks and I'll just load them up. It's going to be awesome. And I guarantee that will be the opposite of awesome, especially with young children.
It's a recipe for anarchy.
Right. And exhaustion and frustration and all those kinds of things. So that is one of the things I've loved about time blocking when I found it, is just this idea of like, okay, the morning block. What are those things that I'd like to have happen there? And breakfast is in the morning block. It's not in the evening block. So it works and we get fed. Yeah. There was another thought that I had that I wanted to talk to you about. I know that Sunday blues is a very, very common thing that happens to people, and it's the dread of Monday. So I think that can be for someone who works outside the home, and Monday is like, oh my gosh, it's the coming work day. Or it can be what you described, as a mom at home, you chose to do all your laundry Monday for a season, right? And then you dreaded the day. So I know for me at some point, I thought every Monday the house has become an explosion, because the weekend is different than the rest of the week. Even when my kids were not in school, it was different.
Popcorn on Sunday night.
Yeah, or whatever, right?
It's all
I know for me, there was a huge shift when I just called Monday's Recovery Monday. I just bring things back to order so the rest of my week can flow. And I moved away from scheduling things on Monday. And at different times when I served in different capacities at church, or when I volunteered in certain ways, I was pretty adamant that my Mondays were out for me. Yeah. And a person can ask, well, why are Mondays out? You don't have anyone counting on you. You don't have a job outside the home. You don't have an employer. And I said, you know what? I've run it. I've run the experiment, like you said. Yep. And when I let those things creep in on Monday, then I feel like a wreck. And I've just realized if I boundary my Monday, then I can move forward for the rest of the week. So I make the decision ahead of time. Yes. Monday's gotta got to be like that. So I think looking for those opportunities, looking for the ways that for you, for each of you, this needs a little boundary around it. And it doesn't have to be a boundary because someone else needs the boundary. It's enough that I needed the boundary.
Yes. And the boundary often, and I had to give myself this pep talk yesterday. I allowed two things in my boundary yesterday, and I justified them in my mind thinking, oh, I'll just keep it at this many minutes and I'll just.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I recognized again and recommitted again, Jackie, on Monday, only these things.
Right.
The other things are going to have to wait because you need to be rested come Tuesday morning.
Right.
For this, and this.
Yep.
So recommitment. Now there's a note on the planner, a circle. Remember what you learned last week.
Right.
Hold the boundary. It doesn't do much good to have a boundary if you don't hold it.
Yep.
But we're practicing.
Yeah. And it's always practicing.
Yes.
I like this idea of the schedule is the pre-deciding. And I think, because each of us is different, some of us are going to feel like, I don't want to be highly scheduled. That's fine. Right. So decide how much of the boundary you need and your family needs, how much of that fluidity do you need? But also, if there's no plan, then by default, you will be in crisis mode constantly. Yep. You will constantly be putting out the fires and not quite sure. The other thing that I just want to open up for an idea of choice is by sitting down and looking at what you have the different days and being aware of that. It also allows for things like carpools that can actually be multiple, like, what was I going to say? There's a word, mutually, there we go, mutually beneficial, right? For me and for the other people. I have one son in an early morning music class, and I reached out to some other parents in my small town because I have to drive to the other small town to the school. And so there's 4 of us. So every 4 weeks, I drive early, but the other 3 weeks, I don't. And so by taking the time to make some of these decisions, I also took time to reach out to some other people to see if this could benefit both of us, right? Then we can actually expand our time.
Right.
And those things are still getting done. And then I'm also aware of those things that I don't want to carpool. I don't want to outsource, right? I want some of those things to be just for me. So I don't carpool with one of my sons, even though someone asked me to, because that has become our time that we have to talk. He's in high school and he's super busy and he's getting his license soon. So the amount of time I have in the car with that child is going to be greatly diminished in just a few months. And so I've told the other parent, luckily we've talked about this. And when she asked me, she said, I know that's your time with that child, but if it would work, could we do it?
Right.
And so that awareness makes such a difference, because we can't just say, well, everyone go get a carpool. That's the answer, right? Or nobody carpool. That's the precious time. Each of you will have to look at that for yourselves.
Right.
One last thing I wanted to bring up that I was thinking about, as you said, all of these things in our lives are opportunities for us to make a choice. And I'm sure someone's sitting there thinking, yeah, well, we have to do the laundry. We can't run around naked or whatever. We have to have food, right? So on the one hand, for survival, yes, we need food, right? That is absolutely true. But I remember at one point, I wrote this in my calendar, and I wrote it at the top of where I was kind of trying to plan food. We have to eat, plan for it.
Amen.
And so we can fight against that as much as we want, but we do need to eat. I'm not going to say that someone else can't make dinner. My kids are old enough now that on certain nights I say, here's the schedule. I want to go to this child's event or that child's event. You have this practice thing you're doing, so I'm not involved. There's a carpool. Let's talk about what you're going to eat, right? I'm not going to make myself crazy thinking, well, I've got to be 3 places at once. We plan for it.
Right.
And so it works out. I have a friend whose husband teaches, and the way they work it out is she plans the food, she buys the food, and he does all the cooking. because she's giving lessons in the afternoon.
And he likes to cook, because I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he likes to cook more
Yeah.
than she does.
Right.
For me, my husband cooks on Sundays a lot of the time.
Mhm.
And other times he'll come home and I'll just say, here's how far dinner is.
Yeah.
Here's what I need to do. Can you finish that up? So, and I know in some situations, one spouse doesn't cook at all, period. And so I think with all of those things, we just have to recognize, just because one spouse cooks, one spouse doesn't, whatever, just because we need to be 3 places at once, it doesn't mean we don't have choice. We just have to bring it to us and do the examination, right? And then decide, how are we going to move forward?
Yes.
So
Yes. Well said.
So lots of fun things. I'm trying to see here. Okay, well, I guess opportunity for a menu here. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear how your, I don't know if you want to say analysis, but how your awareness comes alive when you sit down and just look at your different days of the week, when you can say, oh, Tuesday's insane. Why am I trying to do anything except just what's on the calendar, right?
Mhm.
Let's clear that day. Or I never even have a minute of time scheduled where I can just sit down and read a book. Let's make that work. And I know you talk about that at some point. We'll get to that eventually, those kinds of things. But we invite you to take some amount of time to just look at your days, look at your schedules, be aware of what is not working. And then take that opportunity to make some choices, and then to just practice, experiment, be a scientist. And if that's feeling a little heavy, to be looking for the problems, then I would suggest that while you're doing that, also recognize the things that are working, right? You might be totally awesome at knocking out the laundry because you just do the laundry and you fold it while you watch a movie and that works for you. If it's working, celebrate it. Celebrate at the same time as you're trying to identify those trouble spots. Because sometimes we can get so focused on the trouble spots that we forget the stuff over here that was working. And we can celebrate that at the same time we're fixing, right? At the same time we're improving. Any last words, Jackie?
No, I think that covers it. It's a nice sound bite, I hope.
We hope so. So become aware, make a change, let us know how it goes, because we always love to hear about people's stories and it helps us to become more aware for ourselves too. Have a fantastic week. I'm Amy Rasmussen.
And I'm Jackie Sorensen. And remember that the door of decision is wherever you are.
Have a great week.
Have a good time. Bye-bye.